Call to order this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Eva, please call the roll.
Mr. Redmond.
Here.
Mr. Weisgerber.
Here.
Mr. Parker.
Here.
Mr. O'Neill.
Here.
Mr. Bateman.
Here.
All right, so next order of business is the review and approval of meeting minutes from the Planning and Zoning meeting dated February 7th, 2023. Does anybody have any changes, corrections, or comments on the meeting minutes? Nope. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as drafted.
Second.
Mr. Weisgerber.
Yes.
Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
5-0, motion carries.
We have no one signed up for open forum. Everybody here is for the public hearings, correct? Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to the public hearing, and we're going to switch the Century Hill, which is case 2023-01, and move that in front of Oak Street. So we need to open the public hearing up for that. Do we have a motion to open case 2023? I cannot say that for some reason. 2023-01.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber.
Yes.
5-0, motion carries.
Do we have any comments from Corey at the city on what this case is regarding?
Thank you, sir. Yes, we have a conditional use application here for a secondary family dwelling unit on an existing parcel of record within the RMD medium density zoning district, filed by John Wilbur for his property at 199 Central Hill Drive. It's in Warren County, parcel ID 160746 5012. It's about 7.75 acres. This would establish a secondary dwelling unit for his mother-in-law on the property. As per chapter 111106, we have to schedule a public hearing. We have to meet the notice requirements. All of that was perfected. And as per the application, this will be a freestanding structure on the northeastern side of the property, near an existing accessory building. Looking at the planning and zoning code, there's specific standards that we have to look at for secondary dwelling. It defines secondary dwelling. This does meet that definition. There are some other standards about family occupying it, 75% of the principal dwelling, separate water meters, things of that nature, and then some general standards for conditional uses. That they have to be harmonious with the code, designed and constructed and maintained in a harmonious and appropriate appearance to the existing or intended character, not hazardous, adequate public facility service, not detrimental to the economic welfare, no uses, processes, etc. that are detrimental, and the Planning Commission has authority to modify that. Given the large size of this property, and the applicant, and the fact the applicant owns some additional acreage to the north, it appears to be harmonious and consistent with the residential character of the lands in the immediate vicinity. Access is achieved via the main access drive on Century Hill. No additional curb cuts are required. The building will maintain at least 30 feet of setback to the eastern property line, which is more rural, and then 200 feet of setback to the northern property line, which would be toward 48. This is really going to be more than 500 feet from any existing dwelling. So, aside from the current principal structure. So in looking at the proposal, I guess you could go point by point, but really it's pretty inconsequential with regard to the request, especially given the large property acreage that's held in ownership by the applicant. So the Planning Commission has several policy options. You can approve conditionally with additional conditions, and modify the request or take action to deny the application. The recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant the conditional use as submitted with 2 additional conditions. They need to submit site plans, elevations, floor plans, construction plans at the time of permitting, and document at the time of permitting that all side and rear yard setbacks are adequately met as part of that process. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. We have Sue Walker who'd like to speak. Sue? Oh. Yeah. Yes, please. So, and please just give us your name and your address, please, as well.
Sue Walker, and I live at 203 Century Hill Drive. Our land abuts to John and Lisa's, and I wasn't sure. I was very happy to hear that this committee has accepted this plan, because I just wanted to say they're great neighbors. He does Class A work. He takes much pride in his property and in his home and in his family and in the Loveland community. I wanted to make sure that you knew that people were for this, and that we do appreciate him and what he does. And I appreciate you guys for accepting his request. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else signed up, correct? Okay. We did receive some emails that were in favor as well, just for the record. I don't know how you want to, Eva, do you post these into the official record? So they were all in favor. There was nobody against it. Do we have any discussion? Yeah. There's a bunch of writing, but nobody else. Do we have any discussions, comments, questions on it?
My only question would be is are we going to require with those plans a boundary survey so we can get proper, the dimensions off of the property?
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We have already received the survey and the setback site plan and the building plans. We're just holding on to them till after this evening.
Yeah. I think in part of the motion, if we approve this, would be to make sure that the setbacks and all that is submitted with the plan is correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I think to me, it sounds like a nice improvement to the property, and it certainly is within something we would want to do, I would think. So, I don't know if anybody has any other discussions. If not, then we can see if there's a motion or not.
I'll make a motion we got to close the hearing first.
Yes, we do. That's correct. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing. Second.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
5-0, motion carries.
Okay, so that closes the public hearing portion, and then we will discuss if we would like to make a motion to move or discuss it further, move forward with this one or not.
I'll move that we grant the conditional use request as submitted, including the following additional conditions indicated in the staff memo.
Second.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
5-0, motion carries.
Okay. Next order of business is case 2022-04, which is the SPD 19 for the Oak Street Homes zoning map amendment and text amendment. We need to go into public hearing for this. Do we have a motion to open public hearing for this case?
Move to open the public hearing for case 2022-04, Oak Street Development.
Second.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
5-0, motion carries.
Okay. Corey, would you like to give a kind of a background on what this
Certainly.
case is about?
So we have before us, this is really the second full true step of the SPD process. If you recall, the applicants went through multiple iterations, really culminating toward the end of 2022 with the adoption of a concept plan for the Oak Street SPD number 19, as it's called, for 6 units along Oak Street, which was adopted through that process, ultimately by council with a concept plan, findings of fact, development guidelines, and so forth and so on. And all of that was attached to the memo. So now this is really the second step of that, which is the actual formal map and text change to establish that SPD. So as per the code, we now jump to this process, and it's subject to a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission pursuant to 115107. So you kind of work through the regulations sequentially in that. It took them some time. They actually hired a new engineer working on the project, Mr. Evans. He's here this evening. I've known Mr. Evans very well, and he refined the plan and has provided the required documentation for that. So what are we doing this evening? We're actually going to amend the text, amend the map, make this recommendation to create this, to change the map for the SPD. And so that then, if it's advanced and approved, that becomes binding, and it'll actually modify the zoning map, and you'll see that. So when, what I attached to the memorandum, it's 1.1496 acres. Hunt and Whitaker is still the applicant. Parcels located at 102 Oak Street. Resolution 22-75 adopted by council was included. That is the concept plan, the resolution, the findings of fact, and all of that. We can sort of skip the preliminaries on this. The public hearing, we have to send out the notice. That notice was again perfected. We published the notice and provided written notice. There are, skipping through that process, there are specific standards for SPD zoning map amendments in 1158, which have some significant findings that the commission needs to review. And so as part of that, looking at the project, you have the project, we've discussed it over and over again, 6 units, development sizes, lot sizes, 4,195 square feet to 6,900 square feet in area, about 21,000, a little over 21,000 square feet, or half an acre in open space, undisturbed hillside area, about 43% of the project site. Really, as discussed previously, they're shifting the density from the H district, which is unrestricted density, to the RMD portion, which is the flatter portion of the site, to preserve the hillside in that. So with the adoption of the concept plan, there were some specific findings of fact that were noted, and I wanted to call this to the Commission's attention. The subdivision will be developed in a manner that respects the natural characteristics of the property. Existing topography of the site is such that preservation of the hillside area is a primary concern because the hillside is a valuable natural resource within the city, worthy of preservation. Setting aside the hillside permanently and building upon more suitable topography on the site, the project will have a positive outcome on the natural and built environment of the city. And then also another significant finding of fact, which I pointed out in the staff report, is the split zone scenario, which I just referenced, which is not desirable in that. And so bringing that under a cohesive planned district would certainly make more sense and facilitate orderly development of the property. Looking at the comp plan, it is consistent with the comp plan, both with the recommendations of the Downtown Strategic Master Plan for the city, as well as the more recently adopted comprehensive plan, because the plan indicates it's designated as part of the downtown residential neighborhood. I'd also point out, as we discussed previously during the Commission's previous consideration on this, that it is generally consistent with density found in the East Loveland, historic East Loveland area as well, because of the smaller lot sizes located there. Kind of skipping through this a little bit, the development characteristics, they're all of record. You're looking at setbacks of minimum lot area, 4,195 square feet, 36 feet, lot width, 20-foot front yard setbacks. Side yard setbacks are going to be a minimum of 3 on each side, depending on the lot. Rear yard setbacks are 20 feet, 35-foot structure heights, accessory structures at 15 feet. looking at the historic preservation district regulations, this still has to go before HPPC, which I would assume the applicant would follow that process. They can really engage in that anytime, but they elected to go ahead and get this second step completed, I believe, before they go to HPPC, which we'll get into kind of the nuts and bolts, the fit and feel of the project at that time with regard to the aesthetics. Looking at, again, going back to my findings or back to my reference to the findings per 115108, there's a detailed analysis of each one of those findings on what the application presents, at least from a staff review. 115108 A1, 3, 4, 5, 115108B. That there are some specific findings in there that the commission can refer to in that, and then also 115108C1, the extent to which it's either in conformance or deviates from adopted plans, suitability of the property in question. So I won't belabor all of those points. Those are at the commission for the commission to review. You really have you have several options. You can vote to recommend approval as requested, vote to recommend approval with some modification, vote to recommend that the amendment not be granted. And you have to do that within a time period no longer than 35 days after the close of the public hearing per the SPD district regulations. So, with that, we would recommend that, given that council has adopted the concept plan, given that the plans filed by the applicant are exactly identical to the concept plan that was filed by the applicant and approved by council vis-a-vis the adoption of 2275, resolution 2275, we would I would recommend that as per 115108 and 115102B2 and 115102A 2C for the city, we would recommend the Planning Commission adopt a formal recommendation in favor of the proposed zoning map and text amendment for SPD number 19 is submitted, incorporating required findings of fact per chapter 1151, section 115108 of the SPD regulations. And those findings of fact are enumerated items 1 through 11 in the staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for we're very fortunate for the very detailed and thorough and thoughtful analysis on this. So I greatly appreciate that. That was really very, very helpful for us to read through. We do not have anyone that I'm aware of that signed up to want to speak on this. Is that correct? Okay, so do we want to have a discussion in public hearing, or would we like to close it?
If we have any questions, can have public hearing while the engineer's here.
Yes, that's fine. If you want to have him,
Yeah.
certainly. Yeah. So if that's the case, we'd like to.
Jonathan.
So you're not out of the woods yet. So if you'd like to give us your name and address and
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan Evans with Evans Engineering, 4240 Airport Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45226. And we're here on behalf of the applicant. We're newer to the project within the last couple months. We've been working on the construction plans. We're getting it developed, but this is obviously the next step of our process here, and then go into the historic meeting as well, and then would look to finalize the plans for submittal at some point should we be granted approval tonight. So,
Okay.
But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah. The only question I have is, and I don't know if you're far enough along in the design yet, but how is the stormwater going to be addressed during construction, after construction? Because it is on the hillside, and water will flow downhill. And I know it's in the steep slope area.
Mm-hmm.
Is the concern is always during construction and afterwards, and how is that going to be maintained? Because homeowners typically don't have that knowledge, and things just happen over time. So I'm a little bit how that once the plans are developed, how is the stormwater going to be addressed
Mm-hmm.
in the design to be not only meet the standards but be preventative in the future?
Right. Well, that's a great question. These small sites are difficult at times to manage, especially on the hillside. But we aren't going to disturb the hillside. That is the steeper portion. That's on the steeper portion that's guess that's the north side. But we aren't going to be disturbing that at all. And I think these will be built individually. I mean, it's not like we're going to blaze the site at first. They're going to get the permission, and I don't know if you'll break out each and every one of them at the same time. But we'll have to have as best we can to put in the stormwater silt fencing and try to block the water a little bit, at least to slow the sedimentation or anything that might leave the site. But we can't do anything until obviously it gets on a roof and you can hook up the roof gutters and the drains and stuff like that. So it is always a challenge, but I guess we'll have to work with staff and try to make sure we're paying attention to that as we design and see if there's anything extra we can do to help out with that.
Okay.
So.
And then in a permit design, we just need to be I don't know if we can put a condition in there now, or just make Christie aware of that.
Yeah, the city follows Hamilton County no matter what county the work is in.
Okay.
Cindy, our city engineer, is beyond diligent over that. She is pretty much a master on that. We're all sensitive to the impact of South 2nd during the 4 units that have been built over the last few years. That road is actually going to get a full-fledged repair and a resurfacing in the 2023 street program.
Okay.
So it should be significant improvements to that roadway.
Okay. And I guess the last kind of observation in looking at the plan that was in the packet is, my question is of the findings and the conditions that we can approve here, the northern portion does fall underneath the 20% or the 18% steep slope regulation. Is should we consider putting a condition that they have to follow the steep slope guidelines, which they're having a professional engineer design it, but there's some other things in that guideline that potentially should be at least addressed, because a portion of that site, portion of the parcel does fall into that steep slope area. And I know 90% of the building is out of it, but should we as a group say, hey, we would like to have that condition as part of that as well?
But I think that, if I may, what the Planning Commission has an opportunity to do is, with this, we're going to bring this back through the site plan review process. So I think that at that time, we will have more definitive grading, erosion and sediment control plans and all of that. And I think that that's perfectly appropriate to require that at that time. And that gives them, assuming it moves forward, that gives them some reasonable assurance that they can then invest, because 25% plans are not 65% plans. So I think that, given that we know that there's going to be some erosion protection, we know that they're generally staying off the hillside. I think the devil's in the details in that, when particularly with the one pad that's closest to the 90-degree radius on Oak, and I think that can be a focus during the site plan review process. Is how are you keeping, how are you preserving the integrity of that? So I think that would be the appropriate time to address that. And I do need to point out a correction in the recommendation. I've got an erroneous section reference. It is 115108 and 115102B2. So I misspoke earlier. So just make sure that, if you do make a recommendation, it's 115108 and 115102B2. Yes. Sorry.
2 right here.
Typo.
A lot of sections to type in keys there.
Do we have any more questions for
No,
Evan?
that's all. That's
Yep.
mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, this just so we're clear, this is what we're approving is our setbacks and zoning issues, not necessarily
Site
site
development.
development issues.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. Would you like to maybe close the public hearing then?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Weisker.
Yes.
5-0, motion carries.
Okay. Do we have any further discussions on what we are being requested for on this text and map amendment? Yeah, so once, if we were to approve this, this goes then forward, what's the next step that would happen after?
So the next step after this is that, so we go per 1151 OB or 1151 02B2, you hold the public hearing to consider it. Once you make the recommendation, we then forward that to City Council. We prepare a final action letter that documents the commission's decision. Because there are specific findings in this, it'll be more than one page if all of those are included. And then it'll go to City Council. City Council will set a hearing to consider the map and text amendment. They'll dispose of it, and then there'll be, final action by council, and then we're sort of off and running. So,
Yeah, and for those that haven't, I know some of you are newer, I should say. This has been through a lot of iterations. This income, we've kicked it back numerous times. The density has been reduced significantly, and then the last time they came in front of us, we agreed to the concepts they had here. So the next step was to do the actual formal map and zoning text amendment. So that's really just where we are at this point in time.
Well, in fact, it was my very first meeting that I walked in when it was, I don't know, what was it originally? 64? 56?
Yeah.
With the parking garage. So I just want to say thanks. I appreciate all the work you put into it to work with the neighbors, and it was a big room that day, and there wasn't a lot of happy people, but it's come a long way, and I know it's cost you some money, and I know it's probably cost you some time and stress and everything else, and I just wanted to thank you for that.
Any other discussion? No? Okay. So if we have a motion, it's a very long motion, but it's a recommendation in favor of that proposed map and text amendment, incorporating all these findings, which we don't have to. We can just reference the document if you want to.
yes, sir.
If we were to have
We'll
it.
just correct the one, Corey.
Yes.
Number 5.
They're number 5.
Yeah.
What do I got? Number 5. As per 115108, no residential use.
No, the 2, whichever one you needed.
Oh, no, that's in the recommendation. So
Okay.
if you were to read, I try to craft those recommendations in the form of, sample language there.
Okay.
So it would read, based on the requirements established in section 115108 and section 115102B2 of the Planning and Zoning Code.
All right. Do we have a motion from anyone? Yes. One way or the other?
I didn't write it down.
You want the docket here? You want that? That'd be helpful. Yeah.
I will move to make a motion based upon the requirements established within sections 1151.08 and section 1151.02B2 within section 1151.02
No, not that part.
Nope. That's
Not that part.
of the Planning and Zoning Code for the City of Loveland staff. Recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission adopt a formal recommendation in favor of the proposed zoning map and text amendment for Special Planning District 19, Oak Street Development, as submitted, and incorporating the required findings per Chapter 115, Section 115.08 of the Special Planning District Regulations, with said recommendation to be immediately forwarded to City Council by City staff on behalf of the Commission.
I'll second that motion.
So to clarify for our final action letter, so we have a recommendation to a recommendation as per section 115108, 115102B2 of the Planning and Zoning Code to adopt a formal recommendation in favor of the proposed zoning map and text amendment for SPD number 19 Oak Street Development is submitted, incorporating required findings of fact 1 through 11 in the staff report to as per 115108 and to be forwarded to City Council. Is that correct?
That's correct. I missed the 1 through 11 part. Sorry.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
5-0, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Next order of business is case 2023-02, which is the I guess it's the car wash brew site. I don't know what it's being called, the DVD brew site plan. Corey, would you like
That's what we're DVD brew. Yes.
DVD brew?
So,
Okay.
after much back and forth with the applicant, we finally have a site plan review before the commission from DVD Brew. They've been very responsive, working with the city, try to address 95 to 99% of the concerns before we get to this point. So I think that that's been beneficial in that. What we have is this application would result in the conversion of that facility. As you recall, during the conditional use application, project will convert the car wash to a microbrewery, which was approved by the commission. At the time that the conditional use was approved, they specified that it be brought back for site plan and LMO approval as applicable. I thought it was important that we take time to review all the requirements with the applicant, let them work through some of those things, because I think it's resulted in a better development plan. And it's been a good process. So if you see there, 111109 sets forth site plan guidelines for the application. They have submitted all of this, relation to the LMO regulations. There's a lot in the LMO regulations. When you look at that, you look at the proposal, it is a retrofit. So a lot of what's going on the site is not changing with regard to, the building layouts and all that, since we're repurposing that. But they are including specific provisions from LMO, the buffer yard, ground mounted signage. We actually even got them to look at upgrading the lighting, which they did provide lighting that is actually in compliance with some proposed lighting regulations the city's looking at now. So that will be an enhancement to that. And they added landscaping to the property, which will augment what is currently blank slate. And, the city engineer did review this. Cindy's been working diligently with our office to review it. She's got some general requirements, that need to be modified, prior to permitting. It's just some plan call outs regarding the stormwater. And what I wanted to point out was comment number 3 on stormwater. So they actually did address, and that to me was the most important comment, is how are we going to deal with overland flow? You're retrofitting the wash bays, which are designed to be, a wet improvement, drive through with wet vehicles versus now you're going to make it finished space. How are you going to keep water out of that? So they've actually raised the finished floor height significantly in the bays, which they'll be, elevated above the parking lot. And then they provided documentation that the site currently does have adequate overland flow in that. So they've really addressed that comment. The rest of the stuff we can handle through permitting. It's very minor comparative to other issues that we've seen more recently, where we needed some time to work through that. There were some conditions that were part of the conditional use approval. Obviously, look at this for site plan or LMO, which we are doing. Look at sidewalks and landscaping, comply with specific regulations for microbreweries, and eliminate one of the 2 curb cuts. So with regard to signage area, minimal wall signage, ground-mounted signage meets or exceeds the LMO standards. Lighting will reduce light glare and light pollution. Landscaping plans are well designed and will enhance that property. Access management has been deployed. They are proposing one consolidated access point in the center of the parcel. Pedestrian activity, the applicant has furnished a copy of a letter indicating that they agree to 50% of the cost share on the sidewalk. The city is actually pursuing a corridor project in that through a systemic safety grant. So, if that project advances, they'll be on the hook for 50% of that cost on their frontage. So that's good, and that's consistent with other projects that we've done that. And then, looking at the microbrewery conditions, those are very simple conditions to document approval of, and those are really ongoing and operational. things that, it'll be part of our permitting checklist that we go through as part of the review of the final build out of that and then the operation of the facility. So, really think the applicant's done a good job complying with it, the requirements. You have three options really. You can approve as is, approve with additional conditions, or deny, or potentially continue the application. So we would recommend you conditionally approve it. We anticipate this is going to have a positive impact on the area. It's revitalizing and repurposing a defunct use and structure. The only condition, and this is a standard catch-all condition I put on pretty much everything, is comply with all regulatory agencies having jurisdiction. So that pretty much catches everything during the permitting phase, and we would recommend approval of the project.
I'm like an architect.
So the sidewalk, I know that was a big discussion, and these plans do not reflect any proposed sidewalk. I know that has to be coordinated with the city. So is that would that work? Would the site plan be adjusted with the city's?
Yeah. So what we would do is we've got a couple of things going on in that area. There's a water line there that runs on that side of the road. They're going to be putting landscaping in. So what we would do is work with the applicant if we advance that project to make sure that we don't put, we don't want to maybe it's right on the curb. Maybe there's a little bit of a tree lawn. If you recall, there was some gradient discussion closer to downtown as opposed to closer toward, 275 in that. And so we'd have to work with him on that. He has to provide us with easements to do what we need to do if we advance that, and they are aware of that. So we would coordinate that design and layout with the applicant at the time that we advance the project. So
I think part of that sidewalk question was the way it would come down the road because of where the right of way is with that concrete wall with the step down.
Yeah.
They seem to have taken quite a bit of umbrage with trying to put a walk in there. Have we?
At their standard, at full cost they did, but with the 50% cost share, and then with the city having the opportunity for the grant, it would just be a 50% quantities. Whatever our quantities are for the project, they're just going to pay, the quantities based on their frontage. So, we and that's the nice thing about going after a project like that is that you have the ability to make to deal with some difficult engineering challenges as part of that, which we would do through that. So
then the overall impervious surface area with landscaping and other, is it changing much at all?
Yeah, I don't really think it's going to change much. If anything, it's going to be reduced slightly because they are adding a few trees on the frontage where it's asphalt now. And then in the landscaped area, what's grass now, they're actually going to add mulch and plants, which will be better than grass. I mean, marginally better than grass. They're really not adding any more pavement.
So is any of that runoff that comes off the impervious surface today, is it going to be redirected down the backside of the hill, or is that where it all goes?
And it's going to go into the existing storm sewer, but you have to remember the storm sewer was designed to a different level of capacity than what a modern standard would be, and so there is an overland flow path that directs it that way eventually, but that would only be in the event that the storm system would surcharge and go beyond capacity. So right now the pipes were probably designed, we don't know what they were designed for, probably a 10 or a 25 year storm, and then there is going to be some volume provided in the parking lot, through that before it reaches the.
So fundamentally, all I'm trying to poke at is sure that if anything on impervious surface, it's going down. As a landscape.
It's actually an improvement.
Yeah,
right.
Which is an improvement, which is a good thing. And then there's no fundamental change in the direction of the runoff.
You're exactly right.
Those are the two things that I am concerned about. That if today is going to the storm sewer out front, is now going down the backside of the hill, that's a problem.
No, they are literally 99% of what you see here is interior stuff.
That's fine.
So, they're not changing the functionality.
Yeah, I guess the question, if those are open bays now and there's depressed, I mean, was any of the stormwater, you said they're raising the floor level. Obviously, you don't want the...
Yeah, they got to raise the floor level to keep the water out of the finished space.
Right. I just don't know if it's running
were those drains
So if
in
you
the
look
bays
at Mr.
handling
Parker
storm
had it
sewer
pulled
as
up
well
here.
as
Yeah, they,
wash?
So if you look at it here on your site plan, so those were basically, the bays were designed to just capture the water that's coming from the bays there themselves. Is this touchscreen?
Nope.
geez,
So you
Talk to the mouse while you're at it.
but you can see here, you've got your routes, your overflow routes. Most of your water is being directed into here, and then you can see there, catch basins really drains to that point there, and then that is existing and is capturing that, and flow route. You can see here. Let's see if they've got the
yeah, this is the curb cut, and well, this is curb cut's going.
But they're not. I mean, the important thing here, Mr. Weisgerber, is they are not changing.
And that's okay. I didn't know if they were going to repave and consequently grade differently.
Find the stupid thing.
What the
We would
bay
hold them
handles.
to that.
And that's all I'm trying to make sure is
Yeah.
that we don't create a change
Yes,
in a situation that's probably marginal as it is.
right.
That
It
was
would
his
have to
one
be
last condition.
the same or better.
That's all. That's all I'm looking for.
Right.
So the one question I have on the, I'm sorry.
Yep, I'm done. Go ahead.
One question I would have is Cindy okay with a 24-foot entrance drive? Before there was 2 that were 24. Now there's going to be 1 that's 24.
One of the conditions was to eliminate one.
Oh, that's fine. I understand that.
I
But that's really narrow for an in and out where everybody's coming in and out. It's
so what if it so that's at the narrowest part of the apron. Of course, you have with the flare, you're probably closer to 36. I don't know. It's probably it might be closer to 40 feet with the flare. We can certainly adjust that during permitting. I don't think
What I
that's
was
a
going to say,
problem.
I would make sure that it's appropriate in width, so long as there's one.
Whatever the standards are for the,
Correct. We
Yeah.
would
make sure we're
commercial drive standards on that.
I would agree with that because 24 foot's pretty narrow.
It's fine for a
Because-
drive aisle. It's not great for an entry.
And it's a 35-mile-an-hour turn too there. So
right.
So you're probably looking at probably closer to a 30. If you look at that, it's probably going to be a 30-foot drive minimum width,
Right.
with an apron flare to probably a 48. Yes.
it's just knowing that is a 35-mile-an-hour turn in. That's
Well,
going
and
to be
it accommodates left and right.
Yeah.
If you got a left and right, you got multiple,
Yeah.
and you got somebody coming in at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, if it's okay with the commission, we can handle that administratively.
That'd be fine. And the other is with the sidewalk, as we've tried to extend these with any buffering, making sure that somebody doesn't plant trees that start becoming a sightline issue.
Problem. Yes.
Look forward with how that undergrowth may come up and not
Yes.
have a bush that's 4 feet high, so people
Well, and
can't
the-
see them.
that's a really good point. The sign too, that
the sign's currently shown in where a sidewalk would be. So
Yeah.
somebody's
We
going
would
to
have to
eventually
draw
have
it
to.
around it. Yeah.
You're
make
gonna
sure that doesn't obscure vision. Also,
Right. Right.
It's one of the challenges you have with retrofitting a
Yeah, I
site
know.
like
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think what we would do is we would address that as part of the sidewalk project
Yeah.
and just make sure that, I could envision probably where, because parking and space is at a premium on that site, that it's, there's some tree lawn with maybe some different landscaping. Worst case scenario, the sidewalk's directly against the back of curb, and we're just going to have to deal with it. But if we got to move the sign, we'll move the sign. But the nice thing is, as per the, because we have the conditional use, because we have this process, the applicant sort of has to play ball with us. And so, we're going to be reasonably unreasonable in that and have them move or relocate that sign as part of the project. So
No, you're right.
we don't want to create a site distance issue. In fact, what I would suggest is if you look at the corridor, in my experience, if you look at it, you say, if you're sitting, you're trying to make, where is your traffic coming from? What traffic are you looking at? You're probably able to sight that sign on the opposite side of the driveway because your sight distance is going to be better that way, potentially. And that way, especially if you're making a left turn to do this, you get a better, the longest shot that you have to go across traffic it is, looking that way. So in reality, I think that, when we do the sidewalk, if we advance it, that's the time you move the sign.
Yeah. Well, and if you put it on the right side, like you're saying, then you're trying to make a left-hand turn out. You aren't obstructed by looking to your left and not seeing oncoming traffic. If the sign's on the right and you're making a left, you have a better shot at seeing the
Right.
opposite traffic and the close traffic.
And, we can certainly ask them to move the sign now and just not worry about it.
Yeah. I think just quick little coordination on that would be.
Sure.
Yeah, if they see a better place now for it, I think we should entertain that. But they would have to understand in their half agreement, the agreement, and I don't know how we would do this. Is this a covenant with the land? And we're making with DVD Brew right now. What happens if they sell the property? They move on, somebody else. How do we address that as a condition for?
I believe it's like a variance, and it goes with it.
Runs the land.
Runs with the land.
And,
Okay.
and I was looking at this today. One of the things you have to remember how the importance of Corey's advance in the sidewalk project is the amount of people within walking distance. If you include River Ridge and all of the High Ridge development, is actually more pedestrian traffic barring the bike trail than you have in the downtown district.
Yeah.
I actually reached out to Bob Beck, who developed all of High Ridge, both sides. River Ridge, just to let him know about this project, because his residents, of which 142 times 2, it's 280 units of well-maintained, younger crowd residential. It's going to be all over this place. So it's going to have a heavy pedestrian flow. I think that's why Corey sort of pivoted where we were going with the sidewalk design to try to encompass this now.
Mhm.
It's really going to have they saw that obviously when they bought this.
And,
So-
we had that systemic safety grant opportunity come up, and it's like, wow, what, number one,
Perfect
the city
fit.
wants to extend the walks comp plan and all that. What a great opportunity to dovetail into that. So I think, I may talk to them about moving the sign. I know that budget is a concern when you're doing that, but, if they balk at that, it'll get moved when the sidewalk project goes through. So.
Yeah, I think, Corey, that's great because nobody likes to see the sidewalk to nowhere. We would like to see it go to someplace.
Exactly.
Walking. What do I do now?
Yeah.
Very good point.
I have to build the sidewalk to nowhere.
Right.
Any other discussions?
I have one minor, and David, you the covenant with the land. I understand there will be an agreement with this that they'll pay for half of the sidewalk. Is it just the sidewalk, or is it if they have to do a retaining wall, or is it? I want to make sure that we're half of the cost of that work that's in front of them versus just
I'll be honest with you, Dave, and Corey can advance on this, but of all my years of going 50-50 for sidewalk improvements, I've never had a retaining wall.
okay.
But then again, downtown we added the soldiering paver cost, which is obviously what we're doing downtown. That's a good question. I don't know, Corey.
Well, I think that, without seeing it and actually engineering it, I
Mhm.
couldn't tell you what that could be. It could be as simple as throwing some Ready Rock block on the back
Sure.
of it. Maybe maybe it's an elevated pour, at a gradient that achieves ADA,
Mhm.
in lieu of having to put switchbacks in there or lines over by. I think that knee wall over there, Mr. Conger and I could have more conversation about that. I think where the sidewalk would go, it's probably 2.5 feet tall. It's
gonna
not
say
an
it's only 2 feet
insurmountable
tall.
challenge.
Yeah.
So, obviously the city's going to advance the project in the most cost-effective manner that we can if we get grant money for it. So, I can't see something like that being more than, I don't know. I don't want to put a
Okay.
number.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're covered.
Yeah.
That they're not expecting
we
us just to pay for the sidewalk.
Put something in there that sidewalk and any grade work and support of the grade that would be necessary to
And, yeah.
put the sidewalk in.
Yep.
We would engineer that
Right.
to do that. And then again, as per 50%, we'd say, okay, well, your sidewalk, instead of it being $20 a square foot, for your segment's really like 25. and you know you got X square footage, and Cindy would run that calculation,
ED probably stands for
and then we
something.
would certify that to him, and he would write a check.
Yeah, that's just long as we're getting.
Nice thing is we put it in, and then we get the money. You know.
Yeah.
Probably some texting acronym we don't know anything about.
All right. Do we have to, a motion to, so what is the motion? We need approve the site plan with any qualifications,
Just the one condition.
one condition,
All agency comments.
comments, and.
Yep.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. It is a recommendation that the Planning and Zoning Commission conditionally approve this application for the site plan review and LMO corridor approval concurrently for the property located at 1555 Loveland Mirror Road as submitted and incorporating the following additional conditions as follows. The applicant shall address all requirements of all regulatory agencies having jurisdiction over the proposed project prior to the issuance of a building permit to advance a project to construction as applicable.
Second.
Mr. Ricecover,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
5-0, mission carries.
Okay. We have no old business on the agenda. Any communications from? Nope. City? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye, Dave.